Welcome to Cinemophile, where we bring you the best in independent, documentary, and foreign films, and we talk to the people who made them. I'm your host, Mike Caspar, and you can find out more about the program by going to cinemophilepod.com. In 1979, David Greenberger, a recent art school grad, became activities director at a Boston nursing home. David began interviewing residents, rejecting pat questions with unexpected questions like, which do you prefer, coffee or meat? What's an embarrassment? How close can you get to a penguin? And other interesting and provocative questions. The result was something called the Duplex Planet, an early zine characterized by humor, warmth, and sincerity. The film is just a wonderful look at his life and so much more. There's a plethora of interesting people in it. The film is called Beyond the Duplex Planet. We're joined today by the director, Beth Harrington. Beth, welcome to Cinemophile.
Thank you, Mike. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Wow, as we were talking before we got started, I feel at a loss to explain why I didn't know more about David Greenberger before I saw this film. But thank you for correcting that hole in my knowledge bank. And terrific stuff. Just tell me a little bit about how you got involved with this project. What was the inspiration behind it?
I've known David, well, since we were both in our 20s, so 45 plus years. We were both in Boston at the same time. He was a recent art school grad. I was recently out of communications school at Syracuse. You know, it was a time when we were all kind of bumping around trying to figure out what we wanted to do, but we all kind of thought we wanted to be artistes of some stripe. And but we that wasn't necessarily something that just happened. And I, met David then and thought, oh, here's a guy doing a thing that I think is really cool. And so, through mutual friends, I got to know him and was just really impressed and struck by, even though it was a funny thing he was doing on some level, that he was interviewing seniors at the nursing home he worked at and asking them bizarre questions. There was a real human connection and respect and warmth to all of it that really came through. Even when you're in your 20s, I don't think you always understand the importance of those things. And David already had that kind of figured out and dialed in. So I got to know him, over the years as relationships go. They sort of, you're in people's spheres and you're not. And I first was traveling in a band, and then David moved, and then I moved. And so, but we always stayed in touch, and we had mutual friends that kept us up on each other. And of course, I read The Duplex Planet for a number of years. I always got that. And then, a few years back, we were talking, and I was really struggling. My dad was suffering from dementia, and we had this conversation. And after I got off the phone, he had been so helpful, and I thought, I've been thinking about this for years. I've perceived it as some kind of short film, but at this point, David has lived a whole life.
Yes.
And this just in, we're old, So I kind of thought there was something there. I didn't know what it was, but I called him right back and I said, what do you think? Do you want to do something? And he was all in. So that was 2017. So it took us a while. But here we are.
Here we are. Well, and there's something I'll say. It may sound cliched, but I hope it doesn't. And that is the thing that David Greenberger strikes me as an old soul, even as a young man when we see.
Absolutely.
And the film really does benefit from a lot of archival footage of him doing what he was doing.
Yeah.
But he's an old soul. And so for him to connect with the people in these facilities and these places and these retirement homes, and they're called all kinds of euphemisms, but yeah. So to see his interaction, there's a sincerity to him, and it comes across in his work. He's sincerely an artist. He is sincerely a humanist, if you will. And so I think that really brings anyone who watches this film right into this story and his story. He's a wonderful, wonderful man. And let's go back and do a little bit of the history in terms of what kind of an artist, how would you characterize him, and what were and we see it in the film, kind of how he became who an artist that we know him today.
Right. Well, what he went to study, let's put it that way, when he went
Hmm.
to mass art in Boston, and he also went to the museum school at the Museum of Fine Arts for a while, he was a painter. He was painting. But I don't think that the David Greenberger we know now was ever really just a painter. And I don't say that to denigrate painters, but it was more than that. And I think now, in retrospect, we would characterize what he was doing, maybe since he was a teenager, as performance art. Like
Yeah.
he was always doing these little funny projects. In the film, we show that moment where he opens up an old notebook and his friends have documented with a cigarette burn every time they went for a smoke and the date of the smoke and the location of the smoke, and that's like performance art to me. I don't know what else to
Yeah. Yeah.
call that. That is something else. He is a relentlessly creative person, but not in an exhausting way. I would say, like I must create. It's more like, oh yeah, I'm sitting here and I'm drawing a picture, and going over here and I'm sorting through photos and making a thing, and I'm putting making a collage out of postcards or whatever
Yeah.
it is. He's always doing something. But I think first and foremost, he would call himself originally he was like a painter or he drew a lot. He did a lot of, he still does do a lot of pencil pieces and things with rubber stamps. He's got a repertoire.
Yeah. Well, there's people of that era. Again, I mentioned to you as well before we got started. I'm so surprised I didn't know anything or much
Mhm.
about. I didn't know anything about him, to be honest,
Right.
until I saw this film. But he traveled in circles of people that I was interested in, and I thought I knew fairly well. And so,
Right.
so that for people who are wondering about him, if you're a little bit older, you'll
Mhm.
understand that these are people that he knows and work with and who admire him
Mhm.
you know, and it's kind of a great someone who's backing you up in terms of your reputation. There's lots of people in the film that you oh my gosh, and there's a type of art you mentioned performance art. I mentioned to you Laurie Anderson
Mhm.
and that sort of that New York scene during that period of time. So
Right.
much creativity, so many people came out of that.
Mhm.
And in another way, Brian Eno kind of reminds me of the Brian Eno approach to art. It's what's
Uh-huh.
in front of you. The art happens to you all the time, every day, and
Right.
tapping into that.
Yes.
What are those cards, those trading cards that he had at one point? Do you remember Brian Eno? Those,
Yeah, the little with the questions.
yeah.
Yeah, and
It
then you
feels
would
like he would have been
they were
reading them.
prompts for
Yes, yes,
creativity.
yeah.
Yeah.
It'll come to
Yeah.
me in a minute. But anyway, yeah, there was a
Yeah.
name for him. But anyway, all that's just that opening yourself to the universe in a way. You can, however you want to. I don't know exactly how you want to put
Yeah.
it. But David is all of those things, and
He
God,
is.
it's beautiful to
Yeah.
watch.
And I also failed to mention that the other art he pursues is music. I mean,
Yeah,
he's always been a musician,
yeah,
and his mother was a classically trained pianist, and so the music component is huge, and that for both of us, I think that's the other
yeah.
big thing that David I always shared was this music background. So yeah, the fact that he was floating around in that milieu at that time. You've got like the Laurie Andersons and Spalding Gray and Eric Bogosian doing all the spoken word stuff. And then you've got these musicians, people from REM, everyone from like REM to Los Lobos to, I mean, for, it's funny to talk to him and realize how many people sought him out. Like he didn't seek them out, they found him. And it's people like the guys in ZZ Top and, the guys from Crowded House
Well,
and,
well, at the beginning of the, pardon me for interrupting you, but the beginning of the film, we hear George Carlin
George Carlin,
on a phone message. Hey, and there's obviously a relationship there, and
right?
in some ways, it's a little off kilter, but at the same time, no, it isn't, because Carlin at that time was very different than by the end of his life. He was
Right.
whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, I could very much see the two of them
Yeah.
friends. Yeah, it happens throughout the film. It's a casual kind of way okay, people like me. Okay, well that's great, and just keeps doing what he does.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, he doesn't throw it around. It's just, and he's He's definitely an equal opportunity guy this way. I mean, there are people who are completely obscure to most of us who are doing cool things, and
Yeah.
David loves them. There are also people that we all know, you know, Penn Jillette from Penn and Teller, or,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that are like
Michael Stipe, we see it
Michael
beautiful.
Stipe.
I love Michael Stipe's part of this film. Oh,
Very
amazing.
cool. Yeah.
Very cool. Very,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah.
Well,
So he's got that breadth to him. And the common link is humanity, an attachment to our shared humanity and expressing that.
absolutely. I was just going to get to that because the thing that just is more than endearing, it's in this film is his love and appreciation for the people that he works with, works for, works under, works over, whatever, whose lives he touched. And by the way, I just want to quickly remind our listeners, speaking with Beth Harrington. She is the director of this wonderful documentary film called Beyond the Duplex Planet. It is getting a run at South by Southwest beginning on March 12th through the 18th. So if you are well, nowadays you can go to film festivals without being at film festivals, and I think that's the case at South by Southwest. So check this out, Beyond the Duplex Planet. And there are so many of these wonderful connections. Ernie Brookings, Jeff Francis McElroy, Bernie Reagan, Ed Rogers, and of course, I mean, I think we remiss Ernest Noyes Brookings, and there's so many. I'm going to just get emotional to watch the way he brings out the humanity in all of them.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. It's an interesting, I think the other characteristic of David that's really important here is his patience. That is obviously touched on in the film in a funny way, but he is extremely, um, he's the best active listener I know, and he will sit with you, and he
Yeah.
hears people, and I think that's what these men responded to, is that someone was listening to them, and then he started to bring out the things that they were good at, like Ernest Noyes Brookings and his poetry,
Yeah.
or Ken Eglin and his
It's-
record reviews.
Oh, that's right. Record
Yeah,
reviews. That's
yeah,
right. That's
and
right.
Ed Rogers with
That's
his
right. That's right. Yeah.
outsider lettering. Yeah.
But there you can and the way it's presented, you can see the art. You can see it's genuine art from a beautiful place.
Hmm.
And you yourself, I want to talk about your background and in music and you work with Jonathan Richman in the Modern Lovers. Congrats, another band that I'm familiar with. Another
Isn't that a
reason
quirky
why didn't
intersection?
I why didn't I know David? I mean, it's kind of every time and so much more. So bringing that sensibility, you really brought a very artistic, open-minded approach to telling his story. So let's talk a little bit about your background in terms of, how you got into music.
I'm from a family that has also got an artsy bent to it. My parents were working class kids who ended up going to the only state-funded art school in the country, which is Mass Art, where David went, just coincidentally. And my parents always promoted art in the house. My father was an illustrator and a graphic designer, and my mother was an art teacher for a while. So they encouraged everything. And my dad was also a singer, so he really loved to sing and had sort of an amateur career as a singer when he was younger. So that was the ether,
Yeah.
the atmosphere in the house. When I was a teenager, I started working at a radio station and as a volunteer, progressive rock radio station, WBCN. And I was on the periphery of the Boston rock scene. And after college, I came back and was still in that world, kind of like the starlet in the drugstore getting picked by some studio guy. I ended up in the Modern Lovers very casually. Jonathan Richman needed somebody, and I happened to be there. So I ended up going on tour with Jonathan for several years and making and working on an album with him and the other Modern Lovers on Sire Records. Did that for, like I said, several years, and then decided it was time for me to get more serious and started my documentary career around that time, such as it was,
Yeah.
the infancy of my documentary career.
Well,
But music has always played a huge part in what I do, and I've made music documentaries, and I also care a great deal about what the music is in my films. And in this one, Beyond the Duplex Planet, we've had the benefit of working with Tyson Rogers, who is also David's chief collaborator these days. So it's kind of bespoke music for the Duplex Planet world.
fantastic. Do you continue to play? Do you?
I was up until the time my dad came out here and we were taking care of him. He was,
Yeah.
in the later part of his life. But I still take music lessons usually every Monday night. I'm at my friend Nick's house with my husband, and we're taking music lessons from Nick.
Oh, good.
So I still play guitar.
I cannot recommend this documentary highly enough. Again, I have to say, and I'll be honest, it kind of came out of left field. Beyond the Duplex Planet. What? And I was reading the description. I didn't quite get it. Man, it lands. It really, really lands. And just
Good.
there's so much here to getting to know David, getting to know the people that he truly cared about and truly elevated their lives in every way he could. And then just there's a happiness to this film because there's a happiness around David Greenberger and your filmmaking as well just really kind of showcases all of it. He is a true, as I said earlier, humanist in the best sense of the word. And my congratulations. I don't know what else to say. Congratulations to
Thank
you
you.
on Beyond the Duplex Planet. Beth Harrington, thank you so very much for your time and thank you for your work.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate your enthusiasm. It was great to talk to you.
You have been listening to Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar, the place where you will hear from the best in independent documentary and foreign filmmakers. Please check out our previous interviews as well as upcoming interviews and special programming by going to cinemaphilepod.com. We are also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, searchable under Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar. Until next time, thank you for listening.